Opening hook. Imagine waking up one day and realizing that the money in your wallet, the system you trust, and the economy you depend on isn't random. It's part of a cycle. A 1,000-year rhythm of power, greed, and control that has been shaping the world since the very first coin was minted. This cycle doesn't care about nations, borders, or politics. It moves silently, relentlessly, shaping who wins and who loses. Today, I'm going to pull back the curtain and show you not just the history, but the forces that decide your financial destiny, whether you realize it or not. Let's step back in time, not years, not decades, but centuries, even millennia. The history of money isn't just a history of coins, notes, and banks. It's a story written by cycles. Patterns emerge, repeat, collapse, and regenerate. Look at the Roman Empire. At the height of its power, gold coins flooding the economy, massive wealth concentrated in the hands of a few. Then, within centuries, inflation, mismanagement, and political turmoil erased that wealth. Fast forward 500 years to the Renaissance. New forms of currency, new trading hubs, and the rebirth of commerce. But guess what? The same patterns of boom and bust returned, mirroring the failures and excesses of the past. These cycles are not random. They are predictable because they are built on human behavior. Greed rises when confidence is high. Innovation accelerates when opportunity seems endless, and collapse comes when over-leverage and recklessness meet reality. If you understand the pattern, you can almost forecast the future, not with perfect precision, but with undeniable probability. That's why certain families, dynasties, and institutions seem untouchable. They've learned to read these cycles and position themselves at the right place and the right time. Now, let's bring this closer to home. The 20th century saw cycles repeating with shocking familiarity. The Roaring '20s, innovation, expansion, and reckless credit, followed by the Great Depression. Post-World War II boom, inflation of the 1970s, dot-com bubble of the late 1990s, housing collapse of 2008. Each cycle had its own technology, its own context, its own players. But the rhythm, the pattern, was the same. Wealth rises, confidence grows, excess appears, collapse follows, reset begins. Why does this matter to you? Because most people live their lives thinking the economy, money, and opportunity are new every day. They respond emotionally, fearfully, reactively. But when you see the cycle, the 1,000-year pulse, you gain perspective. You see that panic selling during a market collapse is the same behavior that destroyed fortunes during the fall of Rome or the tulip mania in the 1600s. You see that strategic investment during a downturn is the same move that built empires when others fled in fear. The most powerful lesson here is not history itself. It's understanding timing and positioning. When a cycle peaks, the smart move is not just to take profits. It's to prepare for the next collapse. When a cycle bottoms, the smart move is not just to survive, it's to position yourself for exponential growth. And while you cannot control the broader sweep of these cycles, you can control your response. You can anticipate, prepare, and act in alignment with the rhythm rather than against it. This principle is why true financial freedom isn't about luck, income, or even genius. It's about awareness. Awareness of patterns, cycles, and human behavior over time. Awareness that wealth is rarely built overnight. But by reading the currents of centuries, by understanding that the money that controls the world today is the product of patterns that repeat over 1,000 years. When you step into that awareness, you are no longer a pawn, you are a strategist. You begin to see opportunity where others see chaos, and in that moment you stop chasing money and start commanding it. We often think money is about numbers, markets, or opportunities, but the truth is far more primal, far more human. Money is a reflection of psychology. Wealth is not built in spreadsheets, it's built in the mind. Every financial cycle, every collapse, every boom and bust, behind it all are the same drivers: fear, greed, confidence, and perception. Human behavior is predictable because our brains have always responded the same way to risk, reward, and opportunity. Think about it. In every bubble in history, whether it was the tulip mania in the 1600s, the South Sea bubble, or the housing crisis of 2008, the players weren't fools. They were humans reacting exactly as humans always do. Greed makes people overextend. Fear makes them sell at the worst moment. Confidence gives rise to risk-taking that often feels brilliant in the moment but catastrophic in hindsight. The money cycle is not a mathematical anomaly. It's a mirror reflecting the human psyche. Let me make this personal. How many times have you delayed investing because you were afraid of losing? or jumped into an opportunity because everyone else seemed to be making money. That's psychology in action. Your emotions, your mindset, and your perception of risk are the same forces that shape the rise and fall of empires. The ancient dynasties of Rome and the Medici family in Renaissance Florence, they didn't just leverage capital, they leveraged human behavior. They understood that controlling perception, influencing confidence, and mastering fear was as important as controlling gold itself. Here's the critical insight. Psychology is a tool. When you understand the human drivers behind money, you no longer react, you act. You no longer chase, you anticipate. Imagine standing in the middle of a market collapse while others panic. You see the fear in their eyes, the irrational moves they make, and you know the opportunities they are blind to. That's the power of understanding psychology. It gives you an edge that no market manipulation, no insider tip, no crash-proof strategy can provide. This is why education alone is not enough. You can study economics, read charts, learn trends, but if you haven't mastered the internal forces of fear and desire, you will always be vulnerable. The mind is the battlefield where wealth is won or lost. Tony Robbins often says, it's not what happens to you, it's how you respond. And in the context of money, your response is entirely a product of psychology. People who accumulate massive wealth understand that their decisions must be driven by insight, not emotion, by awareness, not reaction. Think about the ancient cycles we discussed earlier. Every collapse is a test of human behavior. The people who lose everything aren't necessarily the least intelligent. They are the most emotionally driven. The people who thrive aren't necessarily the luckiest. They are the most disciplined in controlling their psychology. They don't just survive the wave. They ride it because they understand the currents of human behavior that drive it. But here's the secret. Psychology is not fixed. You can train it, condition it, and transform it. You can learn to recognize fear before it paralyzes you. You can learn to spot greed before it clouds your judgment. You can condition your mind to respond strategically instead of reactively. That's why mental training, emotional mastery, and peak performance strategies are as critical to wealth as money itself. The greats don't just leverage capital, they leverage themselves. They turn their minds into compasses that navigate centuries-old cycles with clarity, precision, and confidence. And once you understand this, you gain something more profound than money. You gain power, not over others, but over yourself. You stop being a victim of market swings, recessions, or systemic manipulations. You stop being swept along by fear, hype, or uncertainty. You become aware of your triggers, your blind spots, your emotional patterns, and you make conscious choices instead of unconscious reactions. This is the essence of mastering the psychology of wealth and power. It's the bridge between knowledge and action, between opportunity and execution, between surviving the cycles and thriving within them. Money will always follow human behavior, but humans rarely follow their own rational minds. The ones who break that pattern, they become unstoppable. They don't just create wealth, they command it. They don't just participate in the cycles. They position themselves to rise every time the tide shifts. And that's the difference between ordinary lives and extraordinary financial destinies. If you think the world is controlled by governments, CEOs, or elections, think again. The real power has always been deeper, quieter, and far more strategic. Throughout history, there have been networks of people, families, and institutions that don't just participate in the economy. They shape it. They understand the cycles, they anticipate the waves, and they orchestrate moves that most of the world will never notice. They are the hidden architects of control. Consider the dynasties of finance, families like the Rothschilds, the Medicis, and countless others who have existed across centuries. They didn't just accumulate wealth, they built systems, alliances, and influence that allowed them to survive crashes, wars, and revolutions. They understood one truth that most people never learn: wealth alone is fragile, but control over the flow of capital is unbreakable. While ordinary people panic during crises, these architects see opportunity, steer the course, and often profit when the masses suffer. Control is subtle, and it is invisible. It's not about owning everything. It's about owning the levers that make others believe they are free. Banks, central institutions, global finance networks, even large corporations, they can influence markets, dictate trends, and manipulate confidence, but they do it quietly, so people rarely recognize it. Money is not just currency, it is influence, it is information, and it is power. And those who understand this principle operate on a different level entirely. Let me give you a modern example. Central banks don't just manage economies, they shape behavior. Interest rates, lending policies, and economic forecasts aren't neutral. They guide decisions at every level of society. And who influences these institutions? Not the average citizen, not the working professional. They are influenced by analysts, advisors, and stakeholders who understand both the mechanics and psychology of money. The hidden architects know that controlling perception is as critical as controlling capital. They know that human behavior, fear, and confidence can be as predictable as any market trend. But here's the deeper lesson. You don't have to be born into these networks to learn from them. Observation, awareness, and strategic thinking can give you access to the same principles they use. The hidden architects exploit cycles not because they are smarter. They exploit them because they understand patterns in human behavior. They anticipate crises, they invest during fear, and they consolidate during chaos. And the remarkable thing is that anyone can adopt this mindset. You can learn to act like the strategist while others act like pawns. Think about it this way. Every crash in history, every economic upheaval, every financial collapse, there were always those who lost everything, and those who turned to the same chaos into unprecedented wealth. The difference was not luck, it was preparation, understanding, and positioning. The hidden architects of control are not superheroes. They are disciplined, patient, and aware. They use knowledge as leverage, and leverage as power. And here's the truth that most people never hear. Control is more about patience than aggression. It's about knowing when to act, when to wait, and when to let the cycles do the work for you. While the world reacts emotionally, these architects respond strategically. While the masses chase trends, they create them. They don't just survive cycles, they harness them. They don't just hold wealth, they command influence. And this is why centuries of financial history repeat. They are the constants behind the apparent chaos. This is the opportunity for you. Understanding these hidden forces doesn't make you paranoid. It makes you powerful. It allows you to see beyond the headlines, beyond the hype, beyond the fear. You start thinking in terms of patterns, leverage, and positioning. You begin to recognize that the world's money flows according to rules that are predictable, that can be studied, and that can be aligned with. You learn to see crises not as disasters, but as opportunities to step into the space where others panic. Ultimately, the lesson of the hidden architects is simple. Power is less about what you have today and more about your ability to anticipate, influence, and align with the cycles of the world. When you internalize this, you are no longer at the mercy of markets, governments, or global events. You operate with awareness. You act with strategy. You leverage knowledge, psychology, and timing to create not just wealth, but freedom. You become the architect of your own life in a world that often seems controlled by others, but is in fact following patterns you can learn to master. History doesn't just happen, it responds. Every boom eventually meets its inevitable bust. Every rise of wealth is punctuated by a crisis, every expansion halted by chaos. And here's the truth that few people understand. Crises are not anomalies. They are not mistakes or accidents. They are catalysts. They are accelerators in the money cycle. They expose weakness, consolidate power, and create the conditions for the next wave of opportunity. Think about it. The fall of Rome wasn't just a political failure. It was an economic collapse, an overextension of resources, a mismanagement of wealth that created chaos and opened doors for new powers. The tulip mania of the 1600s wasn't just a flower craze. It was an emotional and financial overreaction, a bubble built on human greed, destined to collapse and teach a lesson about perception and risk. The Great Depression, the 2008 financial crisis, pandemics, wars, recessions, they all share the same pattern. They shake the foundations of complacency, expose fragility, and accelerate the redistribution of power and wealth. Crises are the universe's way of testing resilience. They separate the reactive from the strategic, the panicked from the prepared. Most people see only loss. They see fear, uncertainty, and danger. But the most successful individuals, the true architects of wealth, see something different. They see opportunity hidden within disruption. Every crisis is a reset button. Every collapse is a chance to rebuild stronger, smarter, and stir. And those who understand this can exploit cycles in a way most people never even imagine. Now, let's get personal. How do you respond when markets crash? When your investments falter? When your career, business, or life hits a wall? Most people freeze, they react emotionally, they allow fear to dictate decisions. That's exactly what the cycle expects them to do. But here's the twist. If you understand that crises are natural accelerators in the money cycle, you stop reacting, you start strategizing. You don't wait for clarity, you create it. You don't follow the panic, you leverage it. History is full of examples. Andrew Carnegie built an empire from the ashes of economic upheaval in 19th century America. Warren Buffett famously said, "Be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful." That's not luck. That's understanding that crises are catalysts, designed not to destroy, but to reveal opportunity for those prepared to act. Crises accelerate the transfer of wealth and influence from the unprepared to the prepared. The psychological effect of crises is also profound. Fear is contagious, confidence is fragile, and perception is everything. When markets collapse, people's emotions are magnified. And when human behavior is magnified, opportunity multiplies. The secret is seeing beyond fear, beyond panic, beyond noise, to recognize the structural, predictable patterns at work. Crises are not anomalies, they are rhythmical accelerators, part of the 1,000-year pulse of money and power. But here's the lesson most miss. Preparation is not just financial. It's mental, it's emotional, it's strategic. The cycle rewards those who can stay calm, act decisively, and maintain clarity when chaos reigns. It punishes those who are reactive, emotional, and blind to long-term patterns. If you can anticipate a crisis, position yourself correctly, and act with clarity, you can turn what appears to be disaster into one of the most profitable moments of your life. This principle applies to every level of life, not just money, personal crises, business crises, even global crises. They are accelerators, testing your awareness, your resilience, and your ability to leverage the moment. Those who master the rhythm of crises don't just survive, they dominate. They don't just weather the storm, they harness it. And in doing so, they align themselves with a principle that has governed wealth and power for over 1,000 years. That collapse is not an end, it's a beginning. Crises are catalysts. They are accelerators. They are opportunities in disguise. And those who recognize this, who position themselves strategically, and who maintain unwavering focus and emotional control, rise while the world falls. They become architects of their destiny, commanding the cycles rather than being consumed by them. And that, my friends, is how the 1,000-year money cycle continues to reward those who understand it, and bypass those who don't. Here's the truth that most people never face. The 1,000-year money cycle doesn't just control the world. It influences your life, your wealth, and your future. But here's the extraordinary part. You are not powerless. You may not control the cycle itself, but you control how you respond to it. You control whether you are a pawn swept along by history or a strategist who rides the waves to freedom, influence, and wealth. Your role is not passive. It's active, conscious, and decisive. Most people live their lives reacting. They watch the news, they follow trends, they buy high and sell low, they chase hype, and then they wonder why they feel trapped, insecure, or powerless. But the cycle itself doesn't care about fear or ignorance. It keeps moving regardless. The difference between those who succeed and those who fail is awareness and action. Awareness gives you perspective. Action gives you leverage. Your first responsibility is to understand the rhythm. The same patterns that destroyed empires, bankrupted nations, and wiped out fortunes also created some of the greatest wealth the world has ever seen. When you recognize the signs, when you see cycles rising and falling, you can align yourself with them rather than against them. You can anticipate opportunities when others panic. You can prepare during times of uncertainty when others freeze. That's how ordinary people become extraordinary. But understanding isn't enough. You must take control of your psychology, your mindset, and your decisions. Fear is natural, but it is also predictable. Greed is inevitable, but it is also manageable. Your emotional responses have been programmed by thousands of years of human behavior, but you can reprogram them. You can condition yourself to act strategically, not reactively. You can build mental resilience, financial literacy, and situational awareness that allow you to navigate cycles rather than be crushed by them. Next, you must take action. The cycle rewards those who prepare, who position themselves, who think long-term while others are consumed by short-term chaos. Invest when others are selling. Innovate when others are stagnant. Build alliances when others are fearful. The power of the cycle is that it multiplies opportunities for those who are disciplined enough to see them and bold enough to act. Finally, your role is not just about survival, it's about creation. You have the opportunity to create wealth, freedom, and influence in alignment with the cycles, to be a force in shaping your life rather than being shaped by external forces. You can become a strategist who sees beyond fear, beyond hype, beyond the illusions of luck. You can step into mastery, using knowledge, psychology, and timing as your allies. Remember this, the 1,000-year money cycle is relentless, inevitable, and impartial. It doesn't care about governments, borders, or individuals. But your response to it, your preparation, your discipline, your courage, determines whether you are a casualty, history, or a commander of destiny. The choice is yours. You can live by reaction, letting fear and uncertainty dictate your path. Or you can rise above, harnessing the cycle, mastering your psychology, and creating a life of freedom, influence, and abundance. This is your moment. The cycle is moving. The world is shifting. Crises will come. Opportunities will appear. The question is not whether you will face challenges. It's whether you will rise to them, whether you will understand, anticipate, and act, whether you will become the strategist in a world of pawns, because those who do are the ones who don't just survive history, they write it. They don't just accumulate wealth, they command it. And that, my friends, is the power of understanding the 1,000-year money cycle. It gives you the ability to ride it, shape it, and thrive within it.